In the heart of the city, tall skyscrapers stretched toward the sky, towering over the streets filled with cars, buses, and bicycles. The city never slept. It was always buzzing with life, from the early morning rush to the late-night hum of streetlights. Among all the busy streets and concrete structures was a small, cozy house tucked away in a quiet neighborhood. This house was home to Tom, his little sister Mia, their mom Joy, and their dad Peter. Their family life was simple, yet happy. Each day started with the same familiar routine, and it brought them comfort in knowing that they were together. Tom, a 14-year-old boy with a bright smile and tousled hair, was the big brother in the family. He was responsible, always looking out for his younger sister, Mia, who was 6 years old. Mia adored Tom and followed him around like his little shadow, trusting him with everything. She had large, expressive eyes that sparkled with innocence, and her laughter could fill the entire house with joy. That morning, as usual, the family gathered in the kitchen. Peter was getting ready for work, adjusting his tie in front of the mirror by the door. Joy, their mother, was busy preparing breakfast in the kitchen. The smell of toast, eggs, and freshly brewed coffee filled the air, making the house feel warm and welcoming. "Tom, have you finished your homework?" Joy asked from the kitchen, her voice soft but firm. Tom, who was sitting at the dining table, munching on a piece of toast, nodded. "Yes, Mom. I finished it last night." Mia was sitting across from him, swinging her legs under the chair as she sipped on her glass of milk. Her school uniform was neatly pressed, and her hair was tied in 2 small ponytails. "I'm excited to go to school today. We're going to have art class," she said cheerfully. Tom smiled at her. "Well, make sure you draw something nice and bring it home, okay?" Mia giggled, her eyes lighting up. "I will." The school bus arrived outside with a honk, and Tom stood up to help Mia get her things. He walked her to the door, making sure she had her backpack on properly, and then led her outside to the waiting bus. "Have a good day, Mia," Tom called as she climbed onto the bus. Mia waved at him through the window as the bus pulled away from the curb. Tom watched until the bus disappeared around the corner before heading back inside. Peter kissed Joy goodbye and grabbed his briefcase, hurrying out the door to catch his train to work. Joy smiled as she waved him off, then turned back to Tom. "Don't forget to eat your lunch today," she reminded him as she packed his bag. Tom nodded, grabbing his things. He felt a warm sense of peace as he left the house for college. Life was good. Everything was normal, and he was happy. Tom's college was a 15-minute walk from his home. He liked walking through the city streets in the morning. It gave him time to think and enjoy the fresh air. The streets were busy with people rushing to work, vendors setting up their stalls, and the sound of cars honking filled the air. When he arrived at college, everything seemed as usual. He met up with his friends, joined his classes, and took notes as the teacher spoke. The day progressed normally, but halfway through his first class, something strange happened. Tom suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. He looked around the room, but nothing seemed out of place. The classroom was filled with the usual chatter of students whispering and the sound of pens scratching against paper. But there was something off. He couldn't explain it, but it was as if the air had shifted. He tried to ignore the feeling, focusing on his studies, but the sensation lingered. It was subtle, just beneath the surface, like a nagging thought he couldn't quite grasp. He shook his head, telling himself he was imagining things. At lunch, he joined his friends on the college grounds for a quick game of soccer. As they kicked the ball around, laughing and joking, the feeling returned, stronger this time. It made him pause mid-game. He stopped running and looked around. For a moment, it felt like the world had slowed down. The laughter of his friends sounded distant, and the trees around the field seemed to sway unnaturally, even though there was no wind. "What's wrong, Tom?" one of his friends asked, noticing that he had stopped. Tom blinked and shook his head. Nothing, just Felt weird for a second. His friend laughed, patting him on the back. You're probably just tired, man. Come on, let's finish the game. Tom forced a smile and continued playing, but the feeling of unease stayed with him for the rest of the day. He couldn't shake the sense that something was wrong, even though he couldn't pinpoint what it was. When Tom got home that evening, everything seemed normal again. Mia was back from school, drawing pictures at the dining table. Joy was cooking dinner in the kitchen, and Peter had just come home from work. They sat together as a family for dinner, talking and laughing as they always did. The warmth of their home felt comforting, and for a while, Tom forgot about the strange feeling he had experienced earlier. After dinner, Tom helped Mia with her homework, making sure she finished everything before bedtime. Mia was a bright girl, but she often got distracted easily, especially when it came to her favorite cartoons. Once she was tucked into bed, Tom headed to his own room, feeling tired from the day. But that night, as Tom lay in bed, he found himself unable to sleep. The strange feeling had returned, creeping up on him in the silence of the night. He stared up at the ceiling, listening to the faint sounds of the city outside. His room was dark, but the faint glow of streetlights seeped in through the curtains, casting long shadows on the walls. It was 12:30 a.m. when Tom woke up suddenly. His heart was racing, and the room felt different. Colder, darker, as if something was watching him. He sat up in bed, his eyes scanning the room, but nothing seemed out of place. The feeling of unease washed over him again, stronger than before. Tom's throat felt dry, and he swallowed nervously. The house was completely silent now. Even the usual hum of the refrigerator downstairs seemed to have stopped. He reached for his phone, checking the time, 12:30 a.m. His fingers trembled as he placed the phone back down. What was going on? Why did he feel so uneasy? Tom got out of bed and quietly walked over to the window, pulling the curtain back slightly. Outside, the street looked normal. The familiar glow of streetlights lit up the empty road, and there was no sign of anything unusual. But the feeling wouldn't go away. It was as if the air itself was thick with something unseen, something waiting in the shadows. He stayed at the window for a few moments, watching the stillness of the night. His heart pounded in his chest, and his mind raced with thoughts. Was he just imagining things? Was this all in his head? After a few minutes, Tom pulled the curtain closed and climbed back into bed. He lay down, pulling the blanket up to his chin, trying to shake the feeling. But sleep didn't come easily. His mind was too restless, filled with questions. Eventually, after what felt like hours of tossing and turning, he fell into a fitful sleep. The next morning, Tom woke up feeling exhausted. His sleep had been plagued by strange dreams, vague, unsettling images that slipped away as soon as he opened his eyes. He rubbed his forehead, trying to shake off the grogginess. At breakfast, Joy noticed that Tom seemed distracted. "Are you feeling okay, Tom? You look a little pale." "I'm fine," Tom replied, though he wasn't sure if he believed it himself. "Just didn't sleep well last night." Mia was busy eating her cereal, completely oblivious to Tom's unease. Peter was reading the newspaper, sipping his coffee, unaware of his son's growing discomfort. Tom didn't want to worry them, so he kept quiet about what had happened the night before. As he walked to college that day, the feeling of unease returned, stronger than ever. The city seemed different somehow. The buildings felt taller, the streets more narrow. The familiar sounds of traffic and people felt distant, almost muted. It was as if Tom was walking through a dream, but everything around him was real. When he arrived at college, he couldn't focus on his classes. His mind kept wandering back to the strange feeling, to the sleepless night. He kept expecting something to happen, but nothing did. The day passed in a blur of anxiety and confusion, and by the time college ended, Tom was relieved to be going home. But as he walked through the front door of his house, that same unsettling feeling washed over him. It was like a presence lingering in the air, watching him. Tom shuddered, glancing around the room. Everything looked normal. His mom was in the kitchen, his dad was reading a book on the couch, and Mia was watching TV in the living room. But Tom knew that something wasn't right.